Hello and welcome into BTN's Take 10 podcast. This is Alex Roux of BTN, and before we get into the next episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Northwestern University's School of Professional Studies. If you've ever thought about a career in sports, check out the master's program in sports administration at Northwestern University. You can build your skill set and your network in evening or online classes. Find out more at sps.northwestern.edu/sports. All right, thanks once again to our presenting sponsor. Up at Northwestern, their master's program in sports administration. It's great for anyone who's looking to get into the sports industry, break in, and start a career. Work at a place like BTN, definitely a great opportunity, so check that out. And again, shout out to them for sponsoring the show. All right, we'll get into it now. This week's episode, we have one guest and one segment following that. The guest this week is former college football star, former NFL player, Rosevelt Colvin. Rosevelt played for Purdue in the late 90s, played for the Chicago Bears in the early 2000s, and the New England Patriots during that decade as well. You probably remember him if you followed Big Ten football during that time, or if you're like me, a Bears fan, and remember some of those early 2000s years and the days before Lovie Smith, and the early Brian Urlacher days, and just some interesting times to be a Bears fan. I can barely remember it because I was still a young kid then, but one of Roosevelt's teams was the 2002 Bears that had to play their entire season, home games in Champaign, Illinois, 2 hours south of Chicago at the University of Illinois, because Soldier Field in Chicago was being renovated. So that was a cool opportunity for me to ask him about a time in my childhood that was memorable just because we got to see the Bears up close and personal growing up in Champaign. So that was fun. We also obviously talked a lot about his NFL days besides that 2002 season and his Purdue days as well. Roosevelt had some great stories about some of the more memorable games in Purdue history, some things that definitely wouldn't fly these days, like when he almost had to physically restrain Indiana fans from jumping on Purdue's goalposts. Just some fun stuff, fun discussion, and it was good to catch up and hear what he's been up to since retiring from the NFL. He's been very active in his Indianapolis community, and he'll get all into that in just a moment once we get to the interview. Following that interview, we have a Call for the Culture segment with producer Colleen Degnan. If you don't know, Call fills us in on everything pop culture related, especially when it intersects and blends with the sports world. We talk entertainment, we talk social media, we talk basically what two 20-somethings would talk about at the bar or at work like we do on a daily basis. So good discussion coming up after Roosevelt's interview, and as always, it's good stuff all around, so hope you stay tuned for the entire thing. We'll get into Rosevelt Colvin's interview first. Like I said, he's the former Purdue star, former NFL player, and a great time talking to him. We chatted for about 30 minutes, so we'll get right into it. It's a Take 10 podcast interview with Rosevelt Colvin, and it starts right now. I'm very pleased to be joined by former Purdue star. You probably remember him well from his NFL days with the Chicago Bears and the New England Patriots. It's Rosevelt Colvin. Mr. Colvin, how are you?
Doing good. Doing really well.
Appreciate you taking the time to join me. And just right off the bat, I need to mention you're the second member of the den of defensive ends that I've had on this show. I had Cliff Averill on a few months back. So for those who might not be familiar with that term, who's listening right now, can you describe what the den of defensive ends was at Purdue?
The Den of DNs is sort of a fraternity of guys that played the defensive end position for Purdue University. Started with guys like Otis Armstrong and Keena Turner back in the day, and myself, Chike O'Keefer, and Chukwuka Wakori kind of made a splash there our last couple years at Purdue, and then followed behind us were guys like Ray Edwards, Sean Phillips, Cliff Averill. Most notably, the last guy that has made a big splash is out in Washington, and that's I can't remember what is the kid's name? Ryan Kerrigan. So for the Den of defensive ends, it's just a group of guys that just pride ourselves in making plays, specifically getting to the quarterback, and we just were fortunate to have some real good coaches over those couple of years, and it just catapulted in guys playing that position coming out of Purdue University.
Yeah, and you were part of that group back in the late 90s, and like I said, had a good career in the NFL. But I'm curious what you're up to nowadays, because I was checking out your Wikipedia page, which we know not always 100% reliable, but it looks like you've had quite a few ventures in retirement, including opening a sweets and treats shop. So let me know how you've been keeping busy and what you've been up to.
Yeah, so during my playing days, I played for the Bears for 4 years. When I signed with New England, I unfortunately had a major injury and broke my hip. And in that injury, it was the same injury that Bo Jackson had, so I didn't really know what my future was going to hold. So at that moment, I was bedridden for like 4 or 5 months. My wife and I just decided to figure out what were our next steps in life. And so at that time, we tried to research some franchises, and we ended up getting to the point where we settled on investing in a UPS store, a couple of those here in Indianapolis, and we still are investors and manager owners of going on 4 stores here in the Indianapolis area. And then my wife has always, she's a foodie. Her mom, my mother-in-law, has baked cakes and catered weddings for years in Indianapolis, did our wedding. And when I went to New England, I got released like in, I think it was 2007, after that season that we try not to talk about, where we went 15-1 or 18-1, and when I went to Houston, I signed with the Texans. I ended up getting released, and while I was out there, my wife just thought that she wanted to open up her own bakery, and so over the course of about 6 months, she sat down, got a game plan together, and thought about what she wanted to do, what she wanted to look like, and now we're investors in what we call Sweeties Gourmet Treats, and what we believe is the best cupcake dessert shop here in the Indianapolis Fishers area. They do everything from wedding cakes to custom cakes to anything you can name it. But they're definitely one of the best here in the area, and she does that, and then obviously my love for sports and the passion of being with in the sports arena. I love basketball, played professional football, but I really love basketball. So I run a basketball club. I'm an inner city kid from Indianapolis. Wasn't really expecting to or had a desire to go professional. Just wanted to be successful in life, and so I developed a club or an entity called RC Sports. It started off with NFL flag football, that branched out into basketball, and now we run a basketball club called the Indy Nets Basketball Club for kids, kindergarten all the way through high schoolers, and then we do flag football a couple times a year as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's quite a diverse portfolio. And just getting back to the cupcakes and the sweets, nowadays you see the commercials with Brian Arakpo and Michael Griffin doing their cupcake shop and their setup, but you did it first. You kind of set the template for that.
Yeah. I actually had a parent from the school that my son goes to send me a message about a commercial he saw. I didn't know what he was talking about. Then my wife saw it, and they have an entity. I don't know where it is, but yeah, we have presented the model, and I don't know. I'm not saying that they're copying it, but at the end of the day, we really enjoy being in the business. My wife enjoys it. Her mother enjoys it, and we provide, again, some of the best treats in town. If everybody's ever in town, hopefully the Big Ten, the championships will come back in town, basketball and football, and everybody can come in and grab them something sweet while they're in the area. Yeah,
we got football there every year, and then I think basketball's coming back next year, so I'll have to check it out. And is it true that one of them's like really close to your old high school? You mentioned you grew up in Indy there.
Yeah, so Broad Ripple is a sort of an artsy district of town. Has a lot of bars, a lot of restaurants. It also has my high school, and like I said, being an inner city kid, I always wanted to make sure that those that allowed me to be, or part of the vehicle that drove me to be who I am today, knew that I was appreciative of them, and so when we first opened, invested in the UPS stores, that was the second location that we opened up was in Broad Ripple Village, and it's a very good location for us. Does well, and then when the cupcake opportunity came along, there was a couple doors down, there was a space that was available, so we took advantage of that, opened up our first location, downsized and moved up the street, but we're still in the Broad Ripple area. So, but yeah, my high school, Broad Ripple, is very, very big in who I am and what I represent for the city of Indianapolis. But yeah, we try to keep a foundation somewhere locally, just so we can make sure we remember our roots, so to speak.
Yeah, and you mentioned your sports leagues that you have a heavy hand in. I noticed scrolling through your Twitter timeline, you got a lot of pictures of your kids competing in basketball games, especially AAU basketball. So how did your football family become a family of primarily Hoopers, it looks like?
Yeah, so my oldest son is, he's graduated from Butler, played football. My oldest daughter was not she ran track in high school, does not do sports in college. My youngest daughter, Raven, we were a track family, track and football and basketball, but my daughters ran track, and so Raven, one day in 7th grade, decided she wanted to go out for volleyball, I guess, just for, I don't want to use a bad term, but for giggles, and she wanted to hang out with her friends. And over the last couple of years, she's developed into probably the number one or top, 5 in the country middle blocker. And so she's already been offered a scholarship to go to Purdue University. So the Big Ten tradition continues with her, which is a great thing. And then my son Miles is, which we feel is going to be, one of the best out of the group, just because he's just so big at his age. He's young for his grade. He's 13 years old. He's 6'1", 180 pounds. He can handle, he can shoot. So he played football and basketball, and we've just, over the last, I'd say year, we've dedicated a lot of time in the gym in perfecting his craft as a basketball player, and he's gotten some invites to some elite type of camps. And for me, I love basketball. When I was at Broad Ripple, I played 2 sports, was football and basketball. Was not able to develop my guard skills because I'm 6'3" and a half, 6'4". So realistically, I would be a guard in the NBA or higher level activities. And because I was the most physical and the bigger kid on the team, I always was pushed to the 4 or the 5 position. And so the smaller kids always got to dribble and shoot more than I did. So football was my journey. Basketball was my love. Had a great opportunity to be on the basketball team at Purdue, just as a walk-on because I already had a scholarship. Coach Katie was, all aboard, but my sophomore year, once Coach Coletto left and Coach Tiller came in, Coach Tiller kind of vetoed it and said, I can't have you already at 225 pounds trying to play defensive end in the Big Ten versus a guy like Orlando Pace that's 375 pounds missing the off-season program. So I'm kind of living my basketball dream through my son, but his name is Miles. He's a pretty good player. Just came back from USA basketball camp, so we're trying to continue pushing our academic and athletic student athletes here in the Colvin household.
Yeah, in May, it's that time of year when AAU is like in full swing. I remember those days from when I was in high school. So that's interesting, though. I didn't realize you were a walk-on at Purdue on the basketball team. Did you, first of all, resent the fact that you had to quit the team at all? And do you think that that's kind of the reason why not many people do that nowadays, as far as like the two sport endeavor?
No, I mean, for me, I was a full ride, football scholarship athlete. I inquired and asked Coach Katie if he would have been okay with if I came onto the team. And Coach Coletto was okay with it. Coach Katie was okay with it. But then, like I said, when the coaching change happened, it created the dynamic of, Coach Tiller wanting his guys to be there for 6 a.m.s, team chemistry and camaraderie, building that. And so it was what it was, and, not a big deal. But I think nowadays kids are more isolated or more focused on individual sports just because the spectrum of who you can get from a talent standpoint is so much more wider. Before, 20 years ago, before social media, the kid that lived in, a small town in Virginia or Indiana or wherever it may be would probably get pull for a scholarship or recognize, every 20 or 30 schools. Nowadays, every kid that has an opportunity to play anywhere, to record himself and send a video, has a chance to secure an opportunity to play at a major university if they have the ability. So I think the market is a little bit more saturated, and so that is, in my opinion, created another dynamic of, okay, I got to be good, and if I'm going to be good, then the extra time that I'm taking away, playing another sport, I got to, one sport probably needs to be, for fun and a habit, and the other sport, I'm going to dedicate the additional time to train and prepare myself to be a top conditioned athlete.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. When I was reading up on you, I actually came across an interview that you did for BTN probably 5 or 6 years ago, and you told the story where Indiana and Purdue were playing football. I think Indiana beat you guys, and then their fans tried to tear down the goalposts at Rosevelt Stadium. You had to actually physically restrain them. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, so I'm going to put all the blame on my defensive end mate, Chike O'Keefer. This was I think it was my sophomore year. It was Coach Coletto's last game. It was a home game. We wore all black, and obviously the rivalry is what it is. So they won the game, and their fans proceeded to storm the field, and so as we're walking, they're trying to tear down the goalpost, and myself and Chike O'Keefer are walking towards the end zone to exit out, and there's fans that are attempting to tear the goalpost down. And we just, I'll put it like, we disagreed with what they were trying to do and helped them proceed to go in a different direction is basically what I'll say. But it was fun times. One of the great memories that I had as being a Purdue Boilermaker football player, and just those are the things that as an athlete, those are the things that you love and enjoy. Stories that you can tell your kids, your grandkids, and ultimately continue the tradition of the battle of the old Oaken Bucket and creating a rivalry as it is with Purdue and IU.
That's wild that they even try to attempt to take down the visiting team's goalpost like that, or the home team's goalpost as their visitors. That's insane.
Yeah.
Another game that stands out when looking back at your Purdue career is what one of my coworkers who's a Purdue fan dubbed the Rosevelt Colvin game. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I would assume he's talking about Michigan State.
Yeah, that's the one. So tell me about that wild comeback and, explain your role in it for those who might not be aware of what happened that day.
Yeah, so I believe this was the 97 season. It was Coach Tiller's first year. We were playing Michigan State in Ross-A Stadium. The guy at Alabama, what's that guy's name? Nick Saban was the coach at Michigan State. Yeah, they had a guy on the other end. They called him the specimen. His name was Demetrius Underwood, was an animal. They had guys like him that were just ridiculous. And they were a really good football team. And Brock Spack was our defensive coordinator. It was a battle all game. Billy Dickin was our quarterback. That was Drew Brees' either freshman, I think it was his freshman year, so he was the backup. A guy named Ed Watson was the running back. We had a lot of guys. Brian Alford was a wide receiver. I mean, we had a lot of talent, a lot of guys that were playing well. That was the sort of the turnaround season of Purdue football to put it on the map. And we got down a couple scores. Ended up being, I think, a couple minutes left in the game. They were driving. We ended up stopping them on third down. Coach Spack called timeout, and he literally, in detail, said, "This is what we're going to do." And he said it, and we ended up doing every single thing. He said, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to block this field goal. And then once we block the field goal, we're going to run it back for a touchdown. We'll get the extra point. We'll get an onside kick. We're going to recover the onside kick. We're going to go down, drive for a touchdown, go for two, and win the game. He literally said every single word, every single step, every single moment. We go back out there. They attempt the field goal. I think it was either Leo Perez or Greg Smith, but they were playing D-tackle, blocked the field goal. I picked it up, ran it in. I think it was maybe 60, 70 yards is what I had to run. And people say I was running slow, and I have to make sure I always put this asterisk in there. Coach Tiller's first year, he made all the linemen, regardless if you were a defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive lineman, wear knee braces. And obviously he was trying to keep everybody healthy. But if anybody ever wore these knee braces, or anybody has ever worn a brace on their leg, they understand the dynamics of how it restrains you. So I put that caveat in there to let everybody know that I wasn't running slow. I was just restricted. But we blocked the field goal. I scooped it up, fortunately, ran it back for a touchdown. We get the extra point. We go kick an onside kick. I believe John Reeves recovers the onside kick. The offense goes out. Billy Dicken ends up giving the ball to Ed Watson for the score. I can't remember we went for two or not. Somebody scored, and then went for two and got that. And ultimately, they got the ball back and didn't score again, and we won the game. Half the stadium, probably over, I'd say 3/4 of the stadium left, but it was just one of the special moments, greatest comebacks. It's a classic. It's an ESPN classic. Every time Purdue and Michigan State play, they always run it, and it's just it's been one of the fond memories I've had as a Purdue football player. I tweet it out and replay it every year too as well, because it was just special, man. My bonds with those guys on that team are different, and I really enjoy the time that I had there in West Lafayette.
Yeah, it's a great story. You can kind of compare, or at least use another excuse. Not just the knee pads, but the shoulder pads back then were huge. Those were like cinder blocks on you guys.
Yeah, I don't know what the thought was, but I mean, I was at that era in football. Big shoulder pads was you need to have these if you play this position or that position. But man, had I known I didn't need them or didn't want them, I probably could have had about 10 more sacks every season because I would have been lighter and faster. But great times, man. We look back at those old pictures all the time and just laugh. And it's a like I said, it's a great opportunity to reflect on what was done, but it continues to create that unique bond that we had as a football team.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about your NFL career, especially being here in Chicago and you getting drafted by the Bears and really emerging as a solid linebacker on that franchise. And you had a really breakout year. There was a 13-3 year for the Bears. I believe that was 2001, sandwiched between a couple of down years. So what was playing in Chicago like during your first few years in the NFL, and how did you emerge to become a major contributor?
For me, it was great, man, because the scout by the name of Jeff Shivers was the scout that he tells me every year or all the time that he jumped up on the table and said, "Man, you got to draft this guy." I got drafted in the 4th round by the Bears. Got drafted low because of, in the Alamo Bowl, my senior year, the whole Drew Brees coming out party game, I broke my wrist and dislocated my shoulder. So I wasn't able to go to the Senior Bowl. I had to have surgery on my wrist, so I think my stock kind of dropped a little bit. And then I'm not a big tester. I don't test well. I didn't run the 40 well, didn't bench press well. So I'm a real genuine kid that you got to watch me on film to like me. And so there was one team that felt that way, and they felt that way about me in the 4th round. It was Dick Duran's first year, so we had a really big draft class. We had like 13 draft picks, and all of us made the team, and they kind of pushed a lot of the older guys out. We came in, I was playing behind some guys, a guy named Rico McDonald, which is a great guy. He has a twin brother. Both of them went to Notre Dame. His twin brother lives here in Indianapolis. But Rico was great. Barry Minter was the middle linebacker, and then a guy named Sean Harris was a weak side linebacker. And they drafted 3 linebackers to go with them, myself, Ward Coleman, and Kari Samuel. So our rookie year was a grind. Our position coach was Dale Lindsey, which was the guy that made Junior Seau who he was in San Diego. And then it was a marathon. I mean, practices were hard. All 3 of us said, man, we probably only gonna play 3 years because this is just too much. My knees were hurting every day. So after our rookie year, which was really bad, I mean, we had, quarterback situation was bad, defense was bad, everything was just bad. I think we were like 4-12. The next year, and I was playing outside Sam linebacker, strong side linebacker. The next year they drafted Brian Urlacher, and so when they drafted Brian, they immediately penciled him in to play Sam linebacker, and put him in front of me. And that kind of lit a fire under me a little bit, or kind of irked me some because, obviously he's a 1st round pick, kid had talent, and we see where he ended up going. But at the end of the day, it kind of changed the dynamics of how I looked at the game. That second year, I ended up beating Brian out in camp as a starting Sam linebacker for the Bears, and I tell him all the time. And I told him at the Hall of Fame induction, I'm the reason why you're here in the Hall of Fame, because if it wasn't for me, you'd still be playing Sam linebacker. You'd be some sap that never really did anything. But and so I had progress to the point where I got the starting job. ended up tearing my MCL midway through the season. So my second year was okay, and then came back the next year. That was really the first opportunity that I had to develop the role or be in a role that I was at Purdue, and I got to rush a lot. Our defense was really strong. Brian was playing really well. I was playing well. Warwick was. They had a guy named Mike Brown that was really good. We brought in two guys, two behemoths, Ted Washington and man, I can't remember his.
Was it Traylor? Keith Traylor?
Yeah, Keith Traylor.
Yeah.
Keith Traylor came in. We had Phillip Daniels on one side. We had Brian Robinson on the other side. We had, we had just. It was literally defensively. We were really, really talented, and it showed. We were a defensive team. We were doing really well. Brought back the whole mantra of the monsters of the Midway. And I had, I think, 10 and a half, maybe 11 sacks that year, made plays. And so that was the coming out party. And really what it was all about was I was a young kid, myself, Ward, Brian came in. He was a young kid. And we were just trying to make names for ourselves. And that, Mike Brown, there was a young core on the defense, and we just had so much fun being around each other. Our families were around each other, our girlfriends at the time, kids, if we had them, and it just created a great environment for us to enjoy the game. And then that really was the turn where we figured out, at that age, that man, we probably could make a little money, if we played a little bit longer. So made a decision to push a little bit harder. And the next year, obviously, our team record wasn't as well, but personally, my production level stayed, up high. I think I recorded another double-digit sacks, and then the infamous checkbox situation happened, and that created a dynamic of me, being able to leave in free agency and go, sign with the Patriots.
Right, and I want to back up to the 2002 season a little bit, the year where you guys fell off from the great year in 2001. You guys had to play in Champaign because Soldier Field was under renovation that year, and I'm from Champaign, grew up there, and remember when you guys came that year and played, and I'm just curious because I'm thinking, like, as a Bears fan and growing up going to Illinois games, I'm wondering what that process is like, just driving down from Chicago or however you guys managed it. What did you guys do, and how big of a drain was that on an NFL franchise having to play 2 hours away?
Yeah, it was. In my opinion, it was a grind. And at the end of the day, it would have had to happen regardless. At some point, I hated that it had to happen. My last year there, but it is what it is. But it was an away game every weekend. We didn't play in Soldier Field at all in 2002. We basically got on a 30-minute flight. We drive to the airport, get on a 30-minute flight, land, stay in a hotel. I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it was like, if that hotel is still standing, I'd be surprised because they still had what we used to call like the bedspreads that you would see at like a motel, like the flower bedspreads. They had rotary phones in there, the TVs you had to change with your hand. It was like, man, we can't be the Chicago Bears. We got to be like the Gary Bears or something like that because then we are staying in places that like a 5-star hotel wouldn't even look at. At the end of the day, we pushed through the season. It was not a great year. I can't remember if they let Coach Duran go that year or the next year, but I ended that season. It was a rough one because there are a few times that again we didn't play well all together, and so guys were getting benched. Guys were getting taken out of the game. People were arguing with each other. It just wasn't a positive situation. The quarterback situation on offense that had a lot to do with it. I think the way the offense was running, but we didn't play well on defense either. And so it just it was a grind. It was a really 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 hard grind. Kind of took the fun out of the previous year because the previous year we went to the playoffs. I think we were the 1 or the 2 seed, and the Eagles came in and beat us. And that whole situation, because Jim Miller got knocked out in the first quarter of the game, and we just couldn't hold on to move on to the next round. But it was unfortunate that we couldn't capitalize the next year on that, and the guys went their different ways, and the team broke up, and I think that's when that began the Lovie Smith era.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the hotel situation because back then, like, 2002 Champaign is very different than 2019. Like, they've built up the city quite a bit. Same with West Lafayette. If you've ever been back to Purdue in the last decade, and they actually have real hotels there now, which is funny.
Well, the hotel was right right next door, or was in the same parking lot, or across the street from Steak and Shake. So if that Steak and Shake is still there, it's whatever hotel was is literally a 2-minute walk from there. I don't know if they've torn that down or at least remodeled it. I hope they've done that.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about. It was like a McDonald's right there too, and all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that year, like, it was crazy because Tom Brady and the Patriots came in for Sunday Night Football. Brett Favre and the Packers came in for Monday Night Football. It was just wild to have them in town. And that Tom Brady squad that I think won in a pretty close game, that ended up being your future team. You left the Bears to go to the Patriots. So what I need you to do for me on this podcast is kind of humanize the Patriots for me, like the whole Belichick and Brady dynamic, because to an outsider, they just seem like the evil empire. You know, they've been doing it forever. Give me the human side of these guys, and tell me about Bill and Tom and what they're like.
Yeah, I would say, Bill is by far the greatest coach, I would say, in any sport you can compare it to, just because of the dynamics of what he's gone through, the different eras that he's coached in, different organizations. I think he's been very fortunate to have a guy like Tom Brady, which, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time when it comes to quarterback play. But I think he is the ultimate master of getting the most out of everyone in every situation. At times he can outthink himself, but I think he's, had a lot of guys. I try to throw myself in there, but a lot of guys that are on the field coaches. You think about who he's had on his roster. Obviously, Tom on offense, a guy like Randy Moss. You think about the guys at running back that he's had, like a Kevin Falk, to guys at wide receiver now with Wes Welker, to a Julian Edelman, and then you go to the defensive side of the ball, which I think his MO is. You look at the Hall of Famers that he's coached, or potential Hall of Famers, guys like Richard Seymour, Mike Vrabel is the head coach now. Rodney Harrison, Teddy Bruschi, the guys that I played with, all the way down to Ty Law, all the way down to the guys that are playing right now. It is just amazing to me to continue to see how they roll every year the same way, and I have hands-on experience and understand why. And for me, it was 6 of I would say, the greatest years of my career because we were so successful. Never had a losing season. Went to the Super Bowl. We're on Super Bowl teams 3 times. But it also was, 6 of the most stressful years of my career as well, because it is a grind to stay on top. And the way Bill continues to try to motivate guys to be the best, is the reason why they're where they are. Because if you just take one step backwards, it's going to cost you potentially your job. And so for me, while I was out there going in as a big free agent, I was the biggest free agent signing in Patriot history, when I got out there on my deal, when I signed in 2003, and to go and break my hip, was very fortunate that Mr. Kraft and Bill stood by the contract, the next year. Not that they could have cut me and not, money would have been not flowing, but to allow me to rehab, to get myself back to the point where I could play. I ended up starting, I think, some of the games the next year, starting in the Super Bowl, my second year out there, and then becoming an eventual starter. It's not about anything other than winning, the championship out there. And, if you got a guy that is a monster and maybe the greatest of all time, be ready to be a decoy, because if the other team thinks you're a monster, they're going to send more people at you, and that's when Bill's going to send somebody that they don't think is a monster is going to be the star, and that's where everything kind of balances out. And people see on TV Bill's, demeanor, his responses to the media, and if they knew him personally, if they had a conversation, if you're a football person, you had a conversation with him, it'd be one of the greatest conversations you ever had, because he's a good guy, and what he's doing is he's trying to keep his team focused on the task at hand. And if he can take any of that, deflect any of that to him, to keep it off a player that may have an issue off the field, or may have something that may be struggling on the field when it comes to his performance, if he can take any of that heat to get that guy back up and running and going in the direction he needs it, he's going to do that. And I witnessed it firsthand. It was, 6 great years of football for me, and a lot of great friendships, a lot of great relationships, and still to this day, the way I, participate and coach and do certain things in my life has a lot of effect on me in those areas as well.
Yeah, it's crazy what they've built, and it's still humming along, coming off that sixth Super Bowl this past winter. One more question about your Patriots days, and it's kind of timely because you talked about your hip injury and switching sports, but a point guard on Iowa, Jordan Bohannon, just recently was announced that he had a hip injury and he might miss all of next season. So I definitely wanted to ask you about why hip injuries in particular are so devastating and what it's like going through the rehab process. You mentioned kind of being bedridden and getting down. What's just the entire experience like, knowing that he might not have the same exact injury as you had, but just in general the nature of that beast?
Well, I think it's a major injury just because people that don't play professional football, specifically someone that is older or elderly, is a major setback in their life. So if you're a middle-aged person that what you do on a daily basis is running and cutting and planting, if you have issues with sustaining your power for an extended period of time or having power at all, it creates a problem, and you become a liability from a performance standpoint. And so, for me, going through that whole situation, it was just scary, just because I didn't know. I've always been an athlete and been able to recover. I dealt with a shoulder situation, ended up eventually having surgery with that, but something that deals with my lower extremity, like a knee or a hip, as we're discussing, creates another dynamic of, what am I going to be able to do? And I still have issues to this day that, limit me in certain situations or cause me to have to make certain type of arrangements. But it just, it's a dynamic that, with any injury, until you get back out there and you get back into the flow of what you were used to doing or had been doing before, you never know what is going to happen to you, and you never know what the outcome is going to be. And so, hip injuries can be really challenging. They've made so many strides when it comes to the medical treatments, the procedures that you can get that allow guys to come back and not really have much of an effect. And at 41 years old, I've already had my hip replaced, and I feel better now than I did before I had it replaced, and I wish I would have done it sooner. But again, I still have situations where I feel the weather coming in because my joints are swelling up. So it's just a dynamic of a side effect of being a professional athlete, and that's the risk you take when you sign up for it. You just hope that you don't have too many of them when you go through the process.
All right, I appreciate that insight. And last question, Rosevelt, before I let you go, I'm just curious, as a guy who lives in Indy, played for the Bears, played for the Patriots, has kind of roots in different places, which NFL teams do you follow closely or root for these days now as an observer?
It's I have ties everywhere. Like my roots, my parents are from Texas, so I watch the Cowboys and the Texans a lot just because I grew up, thinking about Tony Dorsett and all those guys when I would go down home to visit my cousins and my family members. The Texans, obviously, have ties with them because they're in Houston and families there. But, the guy that gave me my scholarship to Purdue was Rick Smith. He was the recruiting coordinator for, Indianapolis when he was at Purdue after he had, become a coach. And obviously, if nobody knows who Rick Smith is, he left Purdue, went on to join sort of the scouting department with the Broncos, I believe, got to the highest point there. The Texans, when they became a franchise, hired him over to be their general manager. Rick's wife passed away recently, so continue prayer for him and his family. But Rick Smith, I watched them because he's still there in some capacity in Houston. I was a Colts fan growing up. I worked in the old RCA Dome when the Colts played there. I made the cotton candy. If anybody went to a Colts game in the 80s and 90s with Eric Dickerson, Jim Harbaugh, and Jack Trudeau and all those guys, and they ate cotton candy, I was the guy that made the cotton candy for them.
There you go.
So the RCA Dome and the Colts, I obviously was a Colts fan growing up, would have loved to play for them, didn't get the opportunity. But for a few years here in Indianapolis, I did the Colts pregame show here on a local network here every year. covered them. So I watch them because they're the local home team, and then obviously the rivalry with New England, it always is there. And then the Bears, I watch them because they're my foundation of who I was as an NFL football player. Always cheering for them. It's 100th year. They're celebrating this year, so there's a big celebration. I think the second weekend in June. That's up in Chicago. So I'm trying to try to get up there to attend to that. And then obviously watching the Bears because not the Bears but the Patriots because of my 6 years that I spent out there. With Bill, Mr. Kraft. There's only one guy left playing on that team, and that's Tom. But just to continue to watch, to see them, to see, man, are they going to do it again? And it's been a great opportunity for me to sit back and become a fan. My family's a big fan. We always get road because we're Patriots here in Indianapolis. But it's a good situation for us.
All right, for sure. Well, I appreciate you giving me so much time today, Rosevelt. It's been cool because I remember my first Madden video game I got, and I would always play with the Bears. You were that linebacker that I always played with. So it's cool to chat with you now, all these years later. And once again, I appreciate you taking some time.
No problem, man. Anytime. Love the Big Ten Network. Like I said, my daughter, in a couple years, she's on her way up there to West Lafayette, so I'll definitely continue to be watching. And hopefully I got a class of 2023 participant that will get an opportunity to be a Division I athlete as well. So you guys keep up the good work. Obviously, I did some analyst work for BTN for a few years there with college football as well. So always around and always prevalent. So you guys keep up the good work and help those of us that don't have 24-hour access, because I use the app all the time to watch games.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll keep doing our best, and we'll be following your kids as they come up and maybe coming through these halls one day.
No problem, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you once again to Rosevelt for taking the time. Really appreciate him jumping on, giving me a ton of time and a ton of insight in his life and playing days, and always like catching up with those memorable names in Big Ten history and in NFL history, and especially someone who's brushed shoulders with some of the greats of all time, like Urlacher, Brady, Belichick. Cool to hear about personal stories behind his experiences. So thanks once again to him. We'll toss it over now to our Call for the Culture segment. As I explained at the top of the show, if you've not heard this segment already, something we've been doing for a few months now with our producer, Colleen Degnan, talking about the intersections of sports, pop culture, entertainment, all that good stuff. Some harmless banter, some funny stuff that I hope you'll enjoy, and we'll get right into it. It's our Call for the Culture segment with Colleen, and it starts right now. Okay, we are back in the lab with another edition of Call for the Culture with Colleen, our co-host. Colleen, how's it going?
Well, happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day weekend. We're recording this on Friday, ahead of a long and hopefully relaxing Memorial Day weekend. And I don't know about you, I'll be in the office most of the weekend covering this Big Ten baseball tournament. What do you have planned?
Thrilling baseball. Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll be seeing the parents. So it'll be a nice, relaxing getaway. Maybe some thunderstorms, hopefully not.
It's been a weird spring, like even more than usual. I know we talk about weather kind of as small talk on this podcast, but it's been very up and down in Chicago, even more than usual, with the temps wildly oscillating. What's the word? Varying. Going from 40 one day to 80, and I know
the spectrum is unreal.
I know people listening to this are like, yeah, that's Chicago weather. I think it's been a little weirder than usual this year.
The good days are amazing. Yesterday, got my first beach volleyball under the belt.
It makes you appreciate nicer weather more. That's what I tell people when they're like, oh, how can you deal with Chicago weather? I'm like, you appreciate the good days more when you're put through the bad days.
No, I think we actually just have amnesia. As soon as it gets warm, we're like, oh, what winter exists here in Chicago? But whatever.
So nice.
Here we are.
Big news this week in Big Ten world. We got a new basketball head coach. Juwan Howard was just hired. I think Wednesday was the official announcement. The rumors have kind of been swirling for a number of days, but Juwan Howard is replacing John Beilein. Your thoughts?
I think it'll be awesome for Michigan. The fact that an alumni is coming back to coach, I think it's going to be really exciting. Obviously, there's been some good headlines that it's going to reunite the Fab Five and all of that hoopla, and I haven't really seen anything negative yet. What about you?
Yeah, I think every Michigan basketball fan will admit that there's definitely some risk there. Hiring Juwan Howard, I like the hire. I think he was the best guy they were going to get right now. It seemed like he was the best candidate. But every Michigan fan, I think, will admit that there's just a lot of uncertainty because he hasn't been a college or pro head coach. He's
just an assistant.
Obviously, I don't think he'll have much trouble recruiting. He's very plugged into today's athlete just because he was an NBA player in this decade, and he's connected to a lot of current and former NBA players, and he's got that clout. He's got connections with LeBron, with Dwayne Wade, with his Fab Five guys, with the University of Michigan. And, I'm kind of going into this blind because I don't know all that much about Juwan's coaching ability beyond that. I don't know what an NBA assistant is really responsible for on the bench and what he did with the Heat under Eric Spoelstra.
And I feel like it kind of comes down to how much the style of play can correlate from the league to college.
And it's just interesting because, Beeline was pretty much the complete opposite of Howard. He worked his way up with different stops along the way. He was a proven college coach, and his style, I think, is going to be different just recruiting-wise. I assume Howard will maybe swing bigger with some of the recruits, trying to get McDonald's All-Americans, trying to get big-name guys, and that's not to say he won't develop guys like Beeline did, but I think that was kind of the sentiment when you hear for guys like Jalen Rose and Jay Williams, who was not a Michigan player, but obviously plugged into the scene. They were saying, well, he never got when they were talking about changing the culture, they were saying Beeline never got those highest-ranked players, which I don't think was an issue. I think Beeline just did just fine without it, but obviously there was some desire from the Fab Five guys to bring that culture back.
Yeah, and it's obviously going to be really hard for anyone to be Beeline's following because he already had such a great backing in Michigan, but I think out of anybody, somebody that went to the school already has really good connections with the boosters, alumni, and like you said, big names. So should be good for Michigan.
I'm just intrigued to see how it goes. I think it'll be fascinating and a steep learning curve. I mean, people like Tom Izzo and Matt Painter and all the experienced coaches the Big Ten has are not going to obviously wait for anyone to play catch-up. So he's going to be learning on the fly, kind of thrown into the deep end, and it's going to be fascinating. He's got big shoes to fill, like you said. Moving on to the pro game. I know we just talked about it a little bit. You had something you wanted to get off your chest. I wasn't aware of this, but it's something with the Currys being in the news. It seems like all the time lately.
R.I.P. the Rip City Trailblazers. We're done.
Yeah.
We lost. We haven't covered that yet. But we were swept by Golden State. So, obviously, my fandom is going to stay staunch throughout the coming years. I thought it was the first year under my belt as a fan.
Was it your first full year?
First full year as a Blazers fan. Went pretty well, but yes, they were swept by Golden State. And following, I just became obsessed with the Currys in this entire series because of the brothers playing against each other and Del and Sonia being the most supportive parents, sporting both of their sons. But then following the last game, Ayesha Curry was getting trolled on the internet by a fan calling her son overweight.
Just one fan or like a lot of fans?
Well, it's like a lot of people started to latching onto this, but her
how old's her son?
10-month-old Cannon,
oh.
Their youngest boy. Their family's already so cute. They have 3 kids now. And she was saying, somebody in her Instagram comments asked if she was pregnant again. And she was like, absolutely not. My son is breaking my back, crying emoji face. And one of the comments was, if that kid is 20 pounds, he's got some serious health issues going on.
Did she respond to it, or is this just a random comment you're picking up?
No, she responded saying no, no to you. Are you kidding me? She was very classy about it, but just why are you coming at me? This is ridiculous.
I can't take a lot of internet comments seriously. If I was a parent or somebody with that high of a profile, I think I would just deactivate the comments because people can be so mean with the anonymity on social media, and obviously the Currys are the example of a family that has everything, and people are going to try and tear them down. Just like we saw with her in the news a few weeks ago with her comments about, on being married, and we're not going to get into all that, but people were just trying to use any reason to pick at the Currys, and it's just the outcome, I think, of being a family that everyone perceives as being very desirable.
Like
you know,
you have the
that's what everyone
spotlight.
wants.
They're jealous, and yeah, I completely agree. So I just thought that was a little bit ridiculous, but definitely making.
But that didn't bother you as much as the Blazers losing, right?
Obviously not. I'm just saying obviously Steph's amazing. I mean, and so I'm a big Curry fan in general.
In all seriousness, though, it was a good run for the Blazers. We kind of became an unofficial Blazers podcast.
Oh, I
thanks to you.
absolutely made sure of that.
And I did not expect them to go this far, but we kind of followed them the whole way, and they became quite the story, even though they ended up getting swept. I knew it wasn't going to be much of a series, but I did root for them, to at least make it competitive. It was crazy how they were up double digits.
15, 15, 17, 15 every game.
Games 2 through 4. Or was it every game?
Yes, they had the lead.
And you just knew Golden State was going to, in the end, come out on top because that's what they do. They toy with you.
They're just so efficient. They choose the right shots. They make the right shots. But yes, in every single game, actually, the amount of minutes total after the series was done, the Blazers led more than the Golden State Warriors.
I like these Warriors better than
without
the KD
KD
Warriors. Yeah, it just feels like the Warriors that came up and were likable and were fresh, and I think the ball moves more freely without KD there. Like
it let a lot of other players have some fun.
Yeah, obviously KD's a great player, but we've talked about it. I've soured on his whole shtick after going to the Warriors and ring chasing, in my opinion. So yeah, I enjoy these Warriors more, and obviously don't want to wish injury on anyone, but with KD out, the other Warriors have stepped up, and now we'll see who represents them. It could be decided by the time this podcast comes out.
Yeah, because
the Bucks and Raptors.
I was gonna say, so it's gonna be interesting to see that series play out. Right now, what the Raptors are up 1 game, 3-2.
3-2, yeah. So Game 6, I believe, is tomorrow, and then if it goes to a Game 7, it'll be Monday. And we have to talk about the biggest storyline of that series.
Yeah, following.
Not a player.
No, it's all about Drake.
He's my dad, Drake, Jersey Drake, Aubrey Graham, who is the Raptors ambassador / #1 fan. He gets a lot of camera time.
So much camera time.
Gets a lot of social media buzz.
Low-key a lot of bench time with rubbing nurses' shoulders.
Yeah, he rubs the coach's shoulders. He's got his courtside seat. He's got a lot of criticism and a lot of praise from people, depending on your stance on celebrity fans getting involved. It's kind of like the next version of Spike Lee. What are your thoughts on Drake's antics?
Oh, I mean, I'm all for it for him. Like, he's loving it. Like, just because he's also known for his curse, you know what I mean? That let him have this time. As long as the team that he's supporting isn't asking him to not and he continues, then you know what I mean?
It's almost one of those things like, how do the Raptors, could they even ask him to stop if they want? Like, I think he's in the position of power here. Where, like, even if there's people at the Raptors that are like, that's a little over the top, I doubt anyone's going to actually say, hey, man, chill out.
But, like, I think he's enough of a social phenomenon and, like, leader in that I think he'd have the social cues to pick up if they were not enjoying him. He would know how to back off.
Well,
but he's definitely doing his job with annoying Coach Bud.
Everyone who knows me knows I'm a big Drake stan. He's my favorite artist, my favorite rapper / entertainer. So it's going to take him doing something really weird and bizarre for me to actually call him out. So I'm going to keep saying, do what you're doing, Drake. I rock with you.
So
Don't let anyone shame you out of being a fan. And honestly, I'm not going to blame Drake for this. This is all part of a bigger issue in NBA games that actually my real dad, not Drake, my celebrity dad, my real dad put me onto a while ago, and I agree with him. The seats are too close and too in the action at NBA games.
Really?
Like, look at the courtside seats. Compared to the NBA bench, right? No other sport are seats like this where you can actually reach out and like pretty much touch a player or get involved in the action. The seats at NBA games are literally at mid-court almost, and the NBA benches get pushed into the corner. So you've got like 7-foot-tall dudes hunched around the corner, curling around the baseline. And it's just insane that we have, honestly, fans sitting next to coaches. Like, literally, they'll put the seats right up just so they can make money up against the coach's bench, and it makes no sense. Like, I get the financial aspect of it and wanting to make as many bucks as possible, but things are going to happen like this. I mean, it's been an issue for a while now. Like, we have Russell Westbrook getting mad all year at fans, reaching out and
wildly entertaining,
getting a grasp of him. Fans are getting too comfortable because they have so much access. They're yelling at players and mixing it up, and now I don't think this is a problem what Drake's doing, but it's just going to happen when you have a celebrity who, is already richer than everybody in the building and can is not afraid to, show support that way, and maybe a massage and the head coach's shoulder is going to happen. And it's just the natural progression, I think.
Yeah, but these seats now are just becoming something else. It's becoming a more entertaining aspect. Like, we've seen throughout all year, like, whether it was Sophie Turner at the Knicks game or, like...
Who's Sophie Turner?
Oh, she's Sansa from Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
She's married to Joe Jonas.
Gotcha.
Anyways, whether it's, like, her at the Knicks game, like, she's getting, cheered on by the crowd to, like, do hilarious things on the Megatron. And, like, last night's game with, like, Rodgers and Yelich, like, kind of egging each other on. Like, all of these people sitting so close become just, like, more part of the action.
Well, Jack Nicholson and the Lakers and Spike Lee with the Knicks were kind of the original, like, celebrity courtside seat fans. And, like you mentioned, I'm loving what Wisconsin and Milwaukee has going on with their athletes and their spontaneous chugging contests that have popped up and have kind of gone viral on social media.
Wisconsin's just, first of all, you probably wouldn't want to go there right now since Kiss FM is not playing any Drake songs for the duration of playoffs.
So Kiss FM, the affiliate in Wisconsin, right, is not?
Yeah.
In the whole state or in Milwaukee?
I read him from a Milwaukee newspaper, but it's probably throughout wherever Kiss FM is.
See, that's some dry radio right there if you don't have Drake on for at least
I
a couple
honestly
times an
respect
hour.
that support so much. That's incredible. Because Wisconsin's unique since they only have one professional team per sport. So, like, they get their big stars, and, like, right now, like, all of their stars are, like, pretty hot. Like, Kristen Yelich.
It's a great time to be a Wisconsin pro sports fan. For sure. I mean, they've always had the Packers, but they have the Bucks and Brewers now.
Yeah, but I just think it's incredible. They're getting all of their big stars there, going all in. They now have the radio backing them.
Well, I appreciate the radio's gesture, but when their ratings suffer because they're not playing the best artists in the game, they'll know when to look at and blame but themselves. However,
we'll see.
Back to the chugging contest that we saw on the Jumbotron play out throughout the playoffs. Did you see Aaron Rodgers' weak attempt at housing a beer on Thursday night? It was pathetic.
He's just letting some of his other teammate, get the spotlight.
So this kind of started with the O-lineman, right? I can't think of his name.
David.
But he can just, guzzle him like a tank, pretty much.
Oh, he's huge. Yeah, David Beckham. Have you seen him?
Which any offensive lineman, self-respecting O-lineman should be able to do, to be honest. But he does it like a champ.
Who's a ham, and I love, by the way.
Right. Props to him for embracing this role of crowd favorite and Energizer Bunny. But Aaron Rodgers, you got to do better, man. You're like the most popular guy in Wisconsin. You're basically a god in Wisconsin sports, and couldn't even finish like half a beer.
It's kind of amazing. I feel like it's a little bit on brand.
Yelich finished his, right?
Yeah, he did. Not as quickly.
I don't think he had much going on. Right. I don't think he had much in the cup either. But at least he finished it. He didn't leave any.
I mean, I would definitely be on Rodgers.
How do you look in the mirror after knowing you were on the Jumbotron and you left like a little bit of liquid in your cup when everyone's watching you? I don't know how.
Because at the end of the day, I'm still Aaron Rodgers and I'm the god in Wisconsin.
That's true. Can we talk about, since we're talking about Drake and celebrity fans, the other troll effort from Aaron Rodgers' neighbor in courtside seats last night, Mallory Edens, the daughter of the owner of the Bucks?
Yes.
The owner?
Yes.
So Mallory Edens was wearing a shirt with Pusha T, the rapper's face on it. If anyone follows hip-hop, they might know that Drake and Pusha T had a beef probably about a year ago, and it went back and forth, got pretty nasty and ugly. So she was trying to troll Raptors superfan Drake, obviously, with the shirt. And after the Raptors won Game 5, Drake then switched his Instagram avatar to a picture of Mallory Edens. So he kind of got the last laugh there. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that, she's a nice, attractive young woman. I hope Drake's intentions are purely for trolling and for the good of the sport and basketball. But Drake, he's a charmer. I don't know.
Huge charmer. No, I'm a Drake fan. I think it's hilarious, this entire situation.
So I don't know if he's trying to shoot his shot or not, but it's almost like these celebrity narratives have kind of run parallel to the actual series, which has been entertaining.
Entertaining.
So, are you a Bucks fan now that the Blazers have bowed out?
I'm rooting for the Bucks. I'm not saying I can take much stake, but I have a bunch of friends that are, so would like to see them get.
So they're your backup team, your fallback.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the other playoffs that are going on right now, that take a back seat in America, obviously, because it's not a sport that's quite as popular. But the Stanley Cup final is set. Boston and St. Louis. Blues and Bruins. Blues in the first Stanley Cup
Ever.
final since
49.
Yeah,
49 years.
49 years,
or something like that.
1970, I believe.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
They've never won.
Yeah, they've never won the Stanley Cup. You had an interesting reference here that you dug up. I did not know this was a thing about the Stanley Cup final.
We've got an OG Jim versus Pam matchup here?
Yes, I didn't know these were even involved. These characters were even involved in hockey or had any ties to these cities. What's the deal?
So like you said, I've had a lot of free time now that my Blazers are out of it. So I tuned into some other sports this week. And so after the Blues were confirmed that they're making it to the Stanley Cup, Jenna Fisher was posting about them. And Krasinski, her office romance, Jim,
yeah,
jumped on, and he is a Bruins fan. So now he posted something like, this is going to be awkward about them too. So now it's just turned into this hilarious little feud between Team Jim versus Team Pam.
So Jim's a Boston sports fan?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I think I knew Jenna Fisher
He's from the East Coast, and she's from St. Louis.
I think I've seen her in Cardinal stuff before, which puke. Even another reason why Pam's the worst. But
in this situation, though, because I simply don't want to see Boston get another title this year.
Yeah, it's enough. I mean, the Celtics losing kind of ruined the potential of the Boston Slam or whatever. All 4 teams in 1 year winning the championship. We've talked about how disgusting it is that Boston sports get to win every single title in every sport, and that their championship droughts are shorter than the season, the actual fall, winter, spring, summer. We don't need to beat that dead horse, but yeah, I'm torn here. I don't really have a huge rooting interest, but I think the Blues would be a better story, even though, as a Cubs fan, I'm not the biggest fan of the city of St. Louis. So.
Okay, that's fair. But it's always fun to cheer for a team that's never won.
The Bruins...
they're old vets. I mean, they haven't won for a few years.
Are in the Stanley Cup final quite often. The Blackhawks beat them in 2013, I remember. So we got the best of them. But yeah, Boston sports, as we talked about before on the show, it's enough. They've had enough success the last 10 lifetimes, and they'll probably win the Super Bowl and the World Series again this year. So the Bruins and Jim do not need another trophy to hang on their mantle.
Yeah, so on Monday, while we're all feasting on Memorial Day food cuisine, you can tune in.
Speaking of that, I want to bring that up earlier, but we kind of moved on from Memorial Day talk. Let's get into the cuisine aspect of Memorial Day a little deeper and expand it just to cookouts in general, because I feel like this is a good opportunity. I know you want to test out some of Instagram's new features, working social media here into the discussion. There's a quiz format function on social media now on Instagram. Is that right?
There is.
All right, so let's ask our followers and let's discuss it now. What are the best cookout foods, or I guess the cookout foods you most enjoy on a day like Memorial Day? It could be 4th of July. It could be any cookout occasion, really. But since Memorial Day is on Monday coming up, let's get into it. What are your favorite foods, and do you have any restrictions? Because I feel like nowadays everybody's got something going on that they...
Well, I can't eat a lot of random things because I'm missing an enzyme.
You're gluten-free.
I'm gluten-free.
Right.
Not by choice.
I'm sorry to hear that. I honestly couldn't imagine it.
It's okay. We're getting through it.
And I knew that because I bring you donuts sometimes that are gluten-free. So.
What a nice coworker.
Maybe I did it once.
You did it once. So it still counts. But no, Memorial Day weekend, not only is it kicking off the start of summer barbecue, you know what I mean? I feel like now's the time everyone's busting out the grills.
Yeah.
So
taking the tarp off.
Yeah, it's super exciting if it doesn't rain. Corn on the cob will always be a favorite. Grilling that.
Really?
I think it's incredible.
I love corn.
Chucking it, and then you throw it on the grill. Foil.
Did you say chucking?
Yeah, you chuck it.
Shuck.
Shuck. Oh my God, it's not chucking.
Wait, you thought it was chucking?
I did.
It's you shuck the corn.
Whatever. I chuck it.
Nebraska fans out there are punching the air right now.
But yeah, okay.
So I like corn a lot.
Corn on the cob, though. I don't like corn by itself.
On the cob, it gets in my teeth. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite. But you can't do the hamburgers or cheeseburgers.
Well, yes, I can. Just no bun.
I know, so it's not complete.
Yes, it is. Protein style.
Okay. Fair enough. Or hot dogs with buns?
Not a hot dog fan.
How about sausage or brats?
Brats, yes.
Okay.
What about you?
I love brats and sausage. Also pretty big burger guy. Any kind of barbecue. I'm just not picky, so I like anything, pretty much. I'm trying to think of what's the best.
I feel like lemonade is something that like comes back during this weekend. And white jeans.
I'm a year-round.
Huge fan of white jeans.
I'm a year-round lemonade guy.
Year-round?
Lemonade. The light lemonade from Minute Maid. Get
No!
It with a Jimmy John's sandwich. It's better than regular lemonade. It's the
No.
nectar of the gods. I've always said it.
Completely disagree. I think Minute Maid probably has one of the worst lemonades.
Have you had the light lemonade before?
Yes, it's bad.
It's so good. It's
No.
the best.
I
Honestly, it's my favorite it's my favorite like sugary drink.
Really?
Minute Maid light lemonade.
Mine would
And
be
I'll take that to
Gatorade.
the grave.
Mine would be a red Gatorade.
Red Gatorade's also pretty refreshing.
But no, freshly squeezed
If I
lemonade.
had to pick something, I think I would go for cookout food. Probably brats, I think.
Okay,
Just get
it's a
that-
nice Midwest.
Get that crunch. You know, it's summer. I'm surprised you're not higher on the brats being a Wisconsin grad. I feel like that's very Wisconsin.
That is a very Wisconsin thing. They're fine. I guess I just really crave like the fresh like fruit salads and like the corn on the cobs, like really good guac and chips.
You're all about the side dishes, it sounds like.
Love the sides.
Okay.
Live for the sides.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, like you said, Memorial Day kind of ushers in the summer. Obviously, the holiday has more meaning than that, but it is a nice
True.
It is a nice gateway to the summer every year, especially here because at BTN, it pretty much marks the official start of like our work summer because baseball tournament ends the day before. Things slow down a lot. It's always felt like final exams for me, like they did in college because it was around the same time of year. You know that there's a lot of work coming up, and then after that and the other side of it is a lot of free time that you didn't have before. So summer's coming up, and with that being said, we're gonna take a hiatus on this show because I'm going to be gone for a week or two. With that free time, allow me to take a little bit of vacation. So, Colleen, what are you going to do without me for the next couple weeks?
Rejoice. We'll miss you. Where are you going?
I'm going to China. I'm hopping the Pacific Ocean. That's across the big pond. So I guess you could say I'm going across the pond.
How long is that flight?
It's going to be... So I'm going to Toronto first. And flying from Toronto to Hong Kong, which I think is like a 16-hour flight. And I don't even know if that's like a across the Pacific flight or if they just fly over like North Pole. I don't even know how that works.
True.
So that's going to be the longest flight I've ever been on by far, probably like 2 times as long as any other flight I've been on. But yeah, it's going to be fun going to Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Beijing with my good friend Yu Chang. Shout out Yu Chang, who's born in China and is going to be my tour guide and my translator and my buddy on the trip.
Amazing.
So it should be fun.
That's awesome.
So yeah, there will not be a podcast for the next probably 2 weeks, maybe definitely one week going to take off, but we'll see and hopefully come back refreshed and with some good stories to tell.
Bring back some culture.
Yeah, exactly. And with that said, we have to, before signing off, get into a debate that swept the office this week that I kind of instigated and that I'm going to have to actually test out in China because I'm sure I'll be taking a good amount of public transportation. And this debate is whether or not backpacks are acceptable to wear on a crowded train.
Bringing this back up.
Yes, this was like the hot debate, I think, Tuesday in the office. And because I'm so, selfish and narcissistic, I brought the debate into the office from my personal commute because I'm not positive, I had headphones in, I think somebody on the train chirped at me for wearing my backpack on a semi-crowded train, saying to take it off because people were trying to get around me. And I was not happy about that because I'm a firm believer in the notion that it depends how people are situated on the train, that it should not be a hard and fast rule that you have to take your backpack off on the train. Your thoughts?
And I completely agree with the chirper and think of it as remotely crowded. You do not be rude and you take your backpack off and you put it in front of you or by your feet. You hold it, you look huddled. Because my stance was I get more uncomfortable by making others uncomfortable.
Oh, me too. I'm like
and
that
so
too.
I'm overly like, I'm sorry, I'll
Same.
take out my headphones and like try to make myself as small as possible in an elevator or any
Same.
public space.
Same. I just think there's wiggle room, and I think somehow, for some people, and not everyone I've talked to, because I kind of did like an office survey, but somehow the rule,
Which I think you might have lost
The
to
survey
be
that-
fully transparent.
I think the rule that you should take your backpack off on the train has somehow become lumped in the category like You should not put your backpack on an open seat on the train. You should get up for a pregnant or elderly person on the train. You should get up for a disabled person on the train. Obviously, those are all things that you must do, no questions asked. I don't think the backpack rule falls into that category. I think there's wiggle room, and I believe that sometimes a backpack at your feet is even as disruptive or more disruptive as a backpack on your back, because sometimes just the way people are situated, maybe people are trying to walk by you and they don't want to be kicking your backpack as they walk by. Maybe there's no room on the floor to put your backpack. Maybe there is, just the way the seats are situated, a better opportunity to let the backpack rest on your shoulder. And I will start this argument, or at least I have to back up and let people know that my backpack is not a camping backpack. I'm not a tourist with a overflowing huge knapsack here. It's just a normal small backpack, and it doesn't mean any harm, and I don't think it was in anyone's way.
So, I mean, sure, fair. You bring up a valid point. I'm just also saying if I'm bringing any baggage with me anywhere, it will be stuffed to the brim because I'm all about efficiency. So I'm carrying around a Timbuktu. It's jam-packed.
You also have a different type of bag, right? You don't wear a
Well,
backpack.
yeah. If I'm more, and I don't take public transport as much as you. So
True. I take the train most
I'm
days.
walking the sidewalk, plenty of space.
And I think this is kind of springing up as an issue. I think it's a generational gap because...
Well, we disagree, so we're the same
I know, but I
generation.
think a lot of the older people, like 30 and above, believe this because I think the backpack wearing post-graduating college is a relatively new phenomenon. Like more and more
that's
people,
frowned upon in
more
general.
and more people just no, but it's how it is. Like look on
That's
the trend.
I agree.
Everyone
with
in their
you, yeah.
20s pretty
Has
much still wears a backpack, even into their 30s now. But I think it's just kind of a generational gap that the older, stuffy people think it's a hard and fast rule. Which brings me
Old and stuffy.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear how our coworkers think of that.
Which brings me to my concern that I'm going to commit so many like social and cultural faux pas overseas in China.
You
Like,
should honestly read up.
apparently, though, I think I might be more comfortable. Well, at least my philosophy might fit in better because my friend told me that like personal space is not valued there at all. Like people will back up into you on the train. Like it's a very claustrophobic like society in
Getting anxiety
in
already.
Asia. So at least my backpack wearing will fit right in.
You should definitely read up before you go.
Oh, I'm sure I'm gonna like unwillingly just insult people by accident. I apologize in advance to anyone I might come across over there.
Can't wait to hear the stories.
Before we sign off, one more thing I have to point out. I'm worried about missing like the NBA Finals over there. I know China loves basketball in general. Like it's a very popular
The
sport.
time change, though.
But yeah, like what time is it going to be? I feel like it's going to be. It's like 14 hours difference. I'll have to look it up.
It might work out in your
But
favor.
I think it's going to be like in the morning. So
Yeah,
the
I
games
think
will
it'll
be
be
played in
fine.
the morning.
It'll just be a different vibe.
Like I don't know how I'm going to watch it. Like obviously the channels are different.
Stream on the phone.
Warriors going to sweep anyway, so I don't want to worry about it.
Wouldn't it be nice if you came back to an alter universe, which happens and that doesn't end up happening?
Yeah, if I come back and just the Bucks or Raptors are NBA champs, that would be wild.
He'll come back safely.
I'll try. I'll do my best. Don't miss me too much over here. And I'm not sure when we'll pick this back up, but I can confidently say it'll be in June.
Sounds good.
All right. Enjoy Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy holding it down here at the office without me. And talk to you soon enough.
Talk to you when I talk to you.
All right.
All right, thanks once again to Colleen and Rosevelt for joining. Thanks once again to everyone for listening. And always a shout out has to be given to my producers, Julie Bronder and Wes White. And, I haven't given them a shout out on the podcast yet, but Jordan Joselis, who makes our podcast videos each week that we put out to help promote and amplify the show. Shout out to him as well. He deserves a little credit. Not too much, though. I don't want it to get to his head. So we are moving now to the end of May, getting past Memorial Day weekend. It's wild that college sports are pretty much over. There's some baseball that'll run into June for the Big Ten, but besides that, it's pretty much behind us. We'll keep it rolling, though, on the Take 10 podcast. Might have some gaps in the schedule due to vacations or other obligations that I might have to do and step away for a week or two here and there. For the most part, we'll keep it rolling, keep getting guests week in and week out. And, when college sports takes a break for the summer, we do not. So stay tuned. All right, thanks once again, everyone, for listening. And we will talk to you next time here on the Take 10 podcast.